Welcome to Singapore, the economic jewel of Southeast Asia. I'm Tim Harcourt, the Airport Economist, and I'm going to show you how to do business in this dynamic city-state. Singapore is a global financial centre, a regional trade and logistics hub, plus a significant economy in its own right. It's one of the easiest places to operate in Asia, with English as an official language, few barriers to entry and a strong pro-business legal framework. Singapore is clean, efficient and it's air-conditioned. What's not to love?
Coming up, one of the city's leading executives explains why Singapore is such an easy place to do business. We discover the city's emerging startup and tech scene and learn how Singapore is a great base to access the Southeast Asian market. Singapore is located on the tip of the Malay Peninsula across from Indonesia, between the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean. It has a population of just 5.5 million people, but it churns out GDP of around $300 billion, making it the 39th biggest economy in the world. On a per capita basis, Singapore is ranked 7th in the world. Not bad for a tiny city-state with no natural resources or agricultural land.
Singapore's economy is growing at just over 2% a year. There's barely any inflation and unemployment is only 2%. So what's the secret? Singapore woos overseas investors, welcomes foreign trade and is strategically located on major trade routes in and out of Asia.
Its Changi Airport is a global aviation hub and ranked the best airport in the world by Skytrax. It has almost 7,000 flights a week to 80 countries. It's also one of the world's busiest air cargo hubs, transporting goods like electrical components. Shipping is also big business in Singapore. Its port handles half the world's crude oil supply and a fifth of all shipping containers. The port is a vital asset as Singapore has to import most of its food and natural resources. The country's top trading partners are China, the US and Malaysia.
The World Bank has ranked Singapore as the world's easiest place to do business for the past 10 years, and it's the second most competitive economy in the world, according to the World Economic Forum. Pretty impressive. I spoke to ANZ Bank's Singapore CEO to find out why Singapore is so special.
It's well located in an important region in terms of its proximity to other markets. Has great connectivity globally. From a physical perspective, obviously it's a major hub for shipping and airlines, so it's attracted a lot of logistics activities in the region. There's been a real focus on technology, so there's fantastic connectivity here, both within Singapore and globally. We have a strong, stable government that is business friendly. We have a market that's very attractive for labour, so there's a real centre of excellence for many skills.
Do you find that this market only suits the top end of town, or do you think other small and medium-sized businesses in various industries can succeed here?
I think there's a very broad opportunity in this market from small through to large. We see many great success stories across a wide range of industries. There's some industries that are obvious and been here for some time, but there's many emerging opportunities, for instance, in the health tech space, for instance, education. Agriculture is something that is of great importance to this region, and Singapore's at the heart of that as a commodity trading centre. And if you want to get involved in Asia, Singapore is a great place to start that journey.
In general, do businesses set up in Singapore to service Indonesia and Malaysia and Thailand? Or if you had a business that had a factory or an office in Indonesia, wouldn't you just go straight there? Why would you use Singapore necessarily?
So establishing yourself in Singapore as a base, I guess you particularly for smaller businesses, it gives you the opportunity to create scale rather than spreading your resources around a range of markets. Operating from Singapore allows you to have a range of activities and explore those markets from a strong location.
The ANZ Opportunity Asia report shows that Australian businesses in Asia are far more profitable and have better growth prospects than their domestically focused peers. Can your business really afford not to consider the opportunities that Asia presents? Read the ANZ Opportunity Asia on the sbhub.com.au. South Australia's Cafetto makes cleaning products for coffee machines. It chose Singapore for its regional headquarters and with the help of ANZ has expanded throughout the region.
I think Singapore's got a lot of advantages for a company in Australia. The first thing we discovered was how difficult it was to be exporting our products into Asia without some local presence. People wanted to deal with local people. They wanted to be able to handle their transactions locally. We needed to provide some mechanism by which people could do that. Singapore's got the lovely advantage that English is the prime language. For an Adelaide company, it was relatively easy to get to compared to other places.
So you'd say it's been an easy process exporting to Singapore, having a regional hub there?
I think Singapore is a very good place to do business for an Australian company. I think the business practices in Singapore, the structure, the legal structure to be able to set up a company, it's very straightforward. There's no surprises there. It's a very open economy, which makes it very simple for us to do business. And then, of course, it really is a regional hub for Southeast Asia.
Were there any particular challenges in setting up in Singapore?
The only thing is that it's obviously a more expensive country to do your logistics from in terms of warehousing and that sort of operation. But I think the other transactional costs make it compensate for that, which makes it very simple. The costs of doing business are very, very low compared to other places, and very few surprises.
Singapore has a diverse history with Chinese, Malay, Indian and European roots. A small fishing village and trading port colonised by the British and then flattened in World War II. In just 50 years, Singapore developed from the ruins of Japanese occupation to one of the world's most sophisticated financial powerhouses. Here's its amazing story. Singapore was first known as Temasek, which means sea town, and was an ancient trading port for the Chinese, the Portuguese and the Arabs. The British beat the Dutch as colonists, and Sir Raffles claimed Singapore for the empire in the early 1800s. Over the following century or so, it developed as a trading hub and financial centre as banks and commerce were established in the city. Singapore suffered greatly in World War II. The empire's Asian fortress fell in a surprise attack in early 1942. It was the largest surrender of a British force in history. The People's Action Party won the country's first election in the late 1950s and every one since. Singapore gained full independence in 1965 and Lee Kuan Yew became its first Prime Minister and the father of the nation. Under his leadership, Singapore founded ASEAN, developed one of the world's highest living standards, diversified industry and boomed as a global financial centre. Singapore's style of government has its critics, but it certainly works and it's ranked as the most stable economy in Asia. The Lion City led the region into the Asian century. It's now diversifying from shipping and finance and building a local technology and startup scene.
Singapore is fast becoming the Silicon Valley of Asia and attracting startups in technology, communications and other industries. INSEAD ranked Singapore as the most innovative country in Asia and third in the world. Talk about a bunch of overachievers.
Murudi is a startup accelerator in Singapore founded by the Australian technology company Telstra. I paid a visit to find out what's attracting new business to the city.
I actually think Singapore's future is the thing that's really the most attractive about it. We're talking about a centre of gravity here which is surrounded by 600 million upwardly mobile, young, socially engaged customers all coming into the middle class. And I think that the next 10 years will bear out sort of the argument that Southeast Asia as a subset of Asia more broadly is the next vibrant tech scene.
What does the Singapore government do to create this environment? What sort of incentives do they provide? How does it sit?
It's very well known that Singapore government actively supports innovation. They provide business-friendly policies. They provide tax incentives. They provide a range of grants and R&D.
Even for an experienced industry player, how do you actually get started and networked in Singapore in the startup scene?
But you have to have a clear view as to why you're coming to Singapore. So that's the first thing I'd say. Secondly, I think that there are incredibly strong networks of both ecosystems of entrepreneurs as well as investors here. So I'd be first of all obviously looking at the Tech in Asia E27 publications to get a sense of the players. There are some well-known resources which you can sort of familiarise yourself with, but nothing beats introductions and conversations. So I would suggest that you get in touch with anyone you know within the Singapore ecosystem. The other thing to kind of familiarise yourself with would be the type and number of VC firms here. They're all a little different, and make sure if you're coming here to start a business that you have a clear view as how you're going to participate in this market, why you're going to win, and then who specifically would be investing in you.
So in short, is it the power of proximity or the power of partnerships?
I think proximity yields opportunities for partnerships. You can't do partnerships from abroad. being here is 90% of the answer.
Where are you seeing the strongest growth?
I think over the last 5 years there's been incredible growth in e-commerce, and that's probably a function of the development of Southeast Asia more generally. You know, you've got a whole range of consumers that for the first time are gaining access to the internet, that are having their first smartphones and are starting to consume from products around the region. I think e-commerce was and still is one of the big sectors here, marketplace businesses. I definitely think the opportunities are broad within Southeast Asia, and I think my gut tells me that B2B is the great unsolved opportunity around Southeast Asia.
Just 5.5 million people. Why would you want to start selling to this little red dot on the Asian map? Let's find out after the break. Singapore may be small, but it's one of the richest countries in the world. It has a large middle class with money to spend and attract shoppers from around the region to its glitzy malls and tree-lined promenades. Let's look at how you can get your product over here. Pretty much everything can be imported into Singapore duty-free, except cars, alcohol, tobacco and petroleum products. That's pretty attractive for about almost all exporters. The country does have a sales tax, or GST, of 7% on all imported goods. Vet Products Direct is an Australian company that recently established in Singapore. Let's find out how it's going.
We started work there 5 or 6 years ago, and almost immediately got a very strong response, and we've seen good growth year on year, and at this point we don't see a ceiling to that. We can see it continuing to develop.
How do you distribute your products in the Singapore market?
When we first launched, it was very much a test market, and we had no idea. And so we used all of our infrastructure in Australia and then just shipped direct. So using Australia Post, there was costs and time costs associated with that. But as soon as we started to see the potential there, then we started to warehouse locally in Singapore and distribute there, and we've been through a number of iterations of that. So now the Australian products are still quite strongly sought after in Singapore, but now we're tending to send them in larger quantities and then distribute locally.
You have a bricks and mortar store in Singapore.
Yes.
Why the decision to set a store up in Singapore?
The local consumers started to ask for that, and so that was a really positive thing. I think it also drives some credibility.
You don't have to set up a bricks and mortar store to do well in Singapore. It's a tech-savvy market with around 95% of consumers shopping online as well as in-store. Our friends at Australia Post can of course help you manage your inventory and fill orders from your home base. Plus, they have some great local tips.
The first step for a small business in wanting to export to Singapore is actually just to sell to Singaporeans. E-commerce transactions are very big in Singapore. They're very comfortable to buy online, or maybe go through one of the marketplaces that they use quite regularly. Then, if you were to start to be successful in selling to consumers in Singapore, you might like to export to them. If you were to do that, really Singaporeans like a local relationship with a company that's established there. So Singapore would probably be a great place to go and explore and start to build a partner. So a local retailer, even a local wholesaler, or maybe a complementary brand.
Singapore is renowned for the best quality of life in Asia. Add that to a low-tax environment, minimal red tape and a multilingual workforce, and it sounds like the ideal place to set up operations and do business.
I spoke to Peter Allen, CEO of Grant Thornton Singapore, and asked him if his clients focus on the Singapore market or use it as a launchpad into Southeast Asia.
This is a very small market. It's not a cheap market, particularly a lot of expatriate goods are expensive. So relatively few of our clients certainly come in here for the Singaporean market. They're usually coming here as an entry point to the region as a whole.
With globalisation now, many businesses can go direct to Vietnam or Indonesia. So what sort of business would actually set up in Singapore as a hub for other markets in the region?
I think a lot of businesses choose Singapore because they have not yet decided what the balance of their portfolio in the rest of the region is going to be. I think if you already know that you are going to do business in Vietnam and you're only going to do business in Vietnam, then it makes limited sense, frankly, to do it through a Singapore operation or a Singapore hub. But most businesses aren't in that situation, in our experience. Most businesses know they want to be in this region, and they see this as a natural place from which to start that process of investigation and development.
What are the major challenges facing businesses setting up here in Singapore?
I think the one that I would encourage people to look at is cost and pricing. Singapore is an interesting market from a pricing point of view. Some things are very cheap, think taxis. Some things are very expensive, think gin. And you need to think about that, and depending on your business, you need to think about that in the context of pricing differentials with what you're used to.
A lot of people say that Singapore is a low tax environment. How low are we talking here?
My effective tax rate is 15.7%, which compared with London, which is where I've just come from, is pretty low. Corporation tax rate's around 17%. GST is at 7%. So it is a low tax environment. And as well as being a low tax environment, it's a very simple tax code. It's a very advantageous tax environment for any business.
Singapore's a very mature market, successful OECD-style economy. What sort of new hot sectors have you seen?
It's got a very lively tech sector, a lot of start-up activity. There are considerable tax breaks, even within the low tax environment, for financing tech start-ups. And the government's very keen on making Singapore a smart city in which to operate. So tech, definitely.
Singapore is a standalone market in its own right, but is also an ideal base to access Southeast Asia and the entire region. We're following Australian natural health company Blackmores throughout the series and their journey into Asia. Blackmores chose Singapore as its Asian hub, and most regional executives are based here. I found out why.
So Singapore is an attractive place because of its pro-business environment, and the government has always made it a point to make Singapore a seamless connectivity with all the countries. Yes, Singapore makes sense because Singapore is the midpoint between Australia and the Asia countries, and Singapore has a pool of professionals, multidisciplinary professionals where Blackmores can tap onto to build its core corporate functions in Singapore. We have corporate functions like strategic business planning, development, we have marketing, e-commerce, and we are supposed to build a very efficient supply chain to Asia. And we have, of course, the finance HR functions.
Does the Singapore government locally provide any incentives for you to base yourself here as a hub for Asia or for Southeast Asia, or both?
The EDB is actually very supportive of new businesses in this setting up in Singapore. Basically, they provide a lot of support in terms of recommendation, partnerships, and also there's quite a number of incentives depending on which industry the company is in. Of course, there's also tax incentives in terms of tax rates or in terms of grants.
Singapore is efficient and transparent with exceptionally talented people running business and government. To do well here, you must understand and respect the local culture and processes that are in place. It's what makes this country so successful. Take time to learn how Singaporean partners and clients think and operate. I love Singapore's mix of Chinese, Indian and Malay cultures, along with a lively international expat community. I first visited the country as a university student and had the privilege of studying with a number of talented Singaporeans, kicking off my education on local culture and business practice. Here's what I've learned. Start by respecting the government badge. Singapore is proud of its success and the government guidance of economic activity. Remember, Singapore's first Prime Minister, the late Lee Kuan Yew, is much revered by generations old and young. Follow regulations carefully, they're strictly enforced. Take advantage of the diverse communities, the hawker centres, Chinatown and Little India. Try the incredible food for all tastes and budgets. And finally, have a good time and follow Singapore's slogan, "We take fun seriously."
Singapore has invested in creative industries, so entertainment and culture is important despite the city-state's no-nonsense industrious reputation. I sat down with Indrani Bitt from the Grand Hyatt Singapore to get her insight on the city's diverse culture.
When you travel to Singapore, you will realize there's no such Singaporean face, because there's so many cultures in Singapore. There are like Malay and Indian and even European influences, Chinese obviously.
What are some of the cultural sensitivities that a foreign business person should observe when they come to Singapore?
You do have 4 national religions in Singapore, so we do celebrate all of the religious holidays in Singapore. So no matter if it's Ramadan or if it's Christmas or Vesak Day, where you have to be very sensitive, obviously, is with Muslim business partners, that you obviously make sure that you don't necessarily offer alcoholic beverages or any pork dishes over your business dinners.
So what guidelines should foreign business people follow when undertaking business entertainment here?
You should always know where your business partner is from or what kind of religion he's from. Most of the time you can probably just ask them for their dietary requirements, especially because we've got the different religions in the country, that you make sure that you know if they eat pork or if they need a halal certified restaurant. A lot of Westerners prefer to be outdoors. Singaporeans don't like to be outdoors because obviously they are exposed 365 days a year to the heat. So for them it's their first thought is not necessarily to sit somewhere outdoors or to have a picnic outdoors. So this is not necessarily preferred. Everyone likes to be Singaporeans like to be indoors. So when you have business meetings, always choose indoor facilities. Always make sure there's food. As Singapore is a very small country, it's very easy to get around. So I would recommend not necessarily to walk to business meetings because because of the very humid and hot climate. Taking taxis is very cheap in the city, and also the MRT system.
Food is a big part of Singapore culture. Check out our website for Indrani's dining tips.
Well, here we are at Singapore's world-famous Changi Airport. Thanks for joining us on this tour around the Lion City. Let's recap what we learnt about doing business here. Singapore is pro-business and foreign investment. There are few barriers to entry and a low corporate and personal tax environment. The government offers generous grants and support for businesses entering Singapore in specific industries. Stick to the rules in all government dealings and respect them. That's what makes the country so efficient. Look for professional bodies that have chapters based in Singapore, like Certified Practicing Accountants. Join your country's Chamber of Commerce and find out if your old university has a network here, as many do. Enjoy yourself. Work hard, but don't forget to have fun while you're here. Singapore is a great tourist destination as well as a business hub.
Head over to our website, theairporteconomist.com, where you can watch extended guest interviews, discover exclusive offers from our partners, and find out where we're flying to next.
So see you next time. I'm Tim Harcourt, and I'm the Airport Economist.